So I've been vibe coding trading algorithms on Kalshi recently, including these Trump political mention markets on the left. But my bot keeps bleeding money on one very specific, very stupid word called discombobulator here. And then I finally looked it up, and it turns out it's a word that Trump used exactly once during an interview, and it was in January. But had it been hooked up to the right-hand side, it would have known he only used it once in an interview, and it has lost 9 weeks in a row. But this isn't a random tool I downloaded. This is actually just a second brain that I built with Claude Code using this blueprint that Karpathy gave on Twitter called LLM Knowledge Bases. And had he put this tweet out 2 weeks ago, I would not have lost money 2 weeks in a row. So today we're going to be going over what this LLM Knowledge Bases idea is, why everyone's so obsessed with it, and then how you can get started with it today. So if you haven't seen this post on YouTube or Twitter, it's been going absolutely viral. And it's basically a very good way of allowing your LLMs to work with you and design knowledge bases that evolve over time. So if you're new here, I'm the prediction engineer. I help builders and operators design AI systems that actually work in production. And I use Hyperliquid and prediction markets as my stress test. So the reason why it's been going viral is because it hits on a point that as we're all using LLMs more and more and AI agents in production, we're giving them more and more context, and a lot more things are falling through the cracks, which is what this wiki system actually helps you solve. So the AI chats can answer things, but they still don't evolve over time, and they still forget a lot along the way. And also annoying, you give it a bunch of information, that LLM understands it for that chat window, but then you can't bring it to the next LLM if you want to use, for example, Codex to access something instead of Claude Code. And so you basically don't own that context. The LLM does. So the idea behind the solution of this is to build a wiki, not just leave that context in memory. And then every time you give it something new, you have rules and ways that the other information gets updated along with that one. So for example, if you have some prediction market you're looking at and it relates to another prediction market or some event in the news, normally those would all be disjointed, but you can have rules saying when this prediction market, mention market gets posted, go look up Trump's Truth Social and tie any post to it. So as far as the flow goes for this, even though it sounds complicated, as a theory, it's actually very easy. It's exactly how it would work if you just onboarded someone onto your team. First, you give them raw material, like what are the interviews, what are the emails, what are the PDFs, all of that. You just throw it into a folder. And then because of the rules that you set up, the old pages evolve as new information comes in, and the new information gets run through a series of rules that tie them to other things as well. And then you're left with a system, the wiki, that is interconnected and constantly updating. So instead of the LLM having to go and grep or search for specific text, it can say, hey, this document links to this document. Let me go look at the document that one links to as well. And so why is this taking off right now? Well, it's because we're all using LLMs way more. We're feeding them way more context, and we're having them do way more complicated things. And a lot of the hard part is knowing what relates to what. And so right now, if you're just using the AI agents directly in their chat windows, that doesn't usually happen too well, especially if you add more and more context. So this gives it a way to structure your data that the LLMs can use without just having to store everything in their memory until compaction. And then the other important point, which people have seen even recently with Claude Code and OpenClaw, where Claude banned the use of OpenClaw with Claude Code. If you're tying yourself to specific LLMs, you could be in definite trouble in the future. And so if you have a wiki that the LLM talks to and stores information in, you can replace that LLM with another LLM and not have to worry. Okay, so it all sounds very complicated, but it's really not complicated, and it's even easier to set up because Karpathy literally made a follow-up tweet, and he put in this gist on Twitter you can find, he put basically the exact document you just feed to your LLM. So he puts like the philosophy behind it, what the layers are, like raw sources, the wiki, the schema, which was the brain part, the rules, and then the operations. You ingest the stuff, you query it, you lint. And so all this sounds complicated, but just like everything else, you could just take this and throw it right to your Claude Code instance and have it figure it out, which is exactly what I did. And I also gave it a prompt that I had ChatGPT help also design for this, specifically for prediction markets. And so really quickly, I just want to go over that because you can literally just give this to ChatGPT, which is what I did, and then ask it to design a prompt that you then give to Claude Code. But really quickly, here's the Claude Code one I gave it. So it said, you are helping me build a Karpathy-style markdown research system for Trump mention markets. Mission, build a persistent markdown wiki that helps me decide whether a mention market term is worth bidding. Karpathy flow, ingest raw sources from domains only that are approved. Update the wiki with term pages, source notes, link summaries. Query the wiki as the main artifact. Lint the wiki for weak evidence. I think that just means remove it. But like I said, I just copied this straight from Karpathy and it all worked, which was great. Safety rules, I put some safety rules in there. For each term, and this is going to be your domain-specific thing. So for example, if you're in marketing, you might want some other language here, sales, etc. It just depends on your domain. But for a prediction market domain, I said for each term, maintain whether Trump used it before, how many times, when was it last used, short context snippets, etc. And again, this is for prediction markets, but this exact same thing could be for market research for literally any domain. So after I gave it that, then I just threw it random Kelshi markets, and then it just started ingesting those terms and then finding the raw sources of the PBS interviews, CNN links, etc. It just did all the work for me. And then what was produced afterwards was files like this. So for discombobulator, which is the word I went over before, it's amazing because if I would actually have to go and look this up, maybe I even had a Claude Code instance do this one time, but then if I opened up a new session the next time, it wouldn't know this information. So now the next time I can have literally Claude Code quickly go through all these markdown files, of which there's tons for each word on these Kelshi mention markets. And I could say, hey, give me the ones that were bad performance in the last 3 weeks. Instead of Claude Code having to go hit Kelshi's API, it could literally go hit these markdown files. And every time there's a new Trump weekly mention market, this brain actually goes and fetches it, according to the rules I gave it. And it finds the market and then pulls all the terms and starts the whole process over again, which is amazing. So even with this, I could see the evidence of which things it linked to. This links to other files on disk as well. And I could see the analysis, the contract rules it was on, incredible. And so this was a very short pass at what I did here. I really want to add many other things, like for example, Trump's True Social links, constantly be querying that, constantly be pulling down YouTube transcripts, just build a whole wiki around mention markets that I can use to find better probabilities or where things are mispriced. So for example, if you're in marketing or sales, maybe you want to put all your emails, your client emails in this and have them linked to each other so you can find stuff faster. But honestly, this is extremely open-ended and it's extremely new as a pattern. All this AI stuff keeps changing. And so I'm sure other people are going to spin off this just like they did with auto research and find new and better ways. And so I'll be keeping an eye on those as well. But I'm very excited for this. I think for anyone who's in any domain where there's a lot of information and like you're constantly having to think of, hey, where did I see this last? Or, oh, it'd be cool if I had this connect to this. Any of those type of things. This is actually a great use case of this second brain idea. But I'm very excited for this. I think this is a ridiculous amount of potential, and I think people are going to keep making cool ideas off it and keep expanding it. Let me know in the comments if you're doing anything with this, because I always like hearing what specifically people are doing. A lot of this AI stuff is very theoretical, but then you find, especially with Karpathy's style tweets, he has very good ideas that can be applied to pretty much a lot of things in real life. And so I'm always interested in reading about what people are actually using it for, with either making money, saving time. There's tons of stuff around that and tons of different domains. So let me know if you guys have any comments or anything you're working on in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next episode.